and we are excited to have you join us once again for another episode of PDA's The Impact Circle. This is a podcast in which we sit down with various individuals, communities, local and international partners to see how they are driving sustainable and meaningful change within the development sector in Ghana and across Africa. We are glad to have you here with us. Looking forward to the conversation. Our topic for today is making MERL work for a change. And it's a bit of a double-sided coin. Some people recognize and value the importance of monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning, both in their daily lives and in the lives and activities of an organization, and especially development partners. But some others are not so convinced, even if they do go through the process of researching and trying to learn from the various activities they are carrying out. It is not always that they are able to see its importance and its relevance for actually making a change in the various things that they are doing. Today we are joined in the studio by Mr. Alexander Afram of Participatory Development Associates. He heads the PDA Research Evaluation and Learning team, and we are going to be discussing how MERL can be useful for making a change wherever you are. Stay tuned for the conversation. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Asida.
How are you doing?
Good.
It's good to see you again.
Good to see you once again. How are you doing too?
I'm also doing well. We actually work together since we're both from Participatory Development Associates. But today we get to really talk about the work that you do. If you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit first about yourself and then about PDA, especially with regards to the context of our conversation?
Okay, thank you very much once again. I know we've been trying to have this conversation, so it's good that finally we have had this time. Yeah, you already introduced me, so I don't know what else to say. But yeah, I am a research monitoring and evaluation specialist with over 10 years experience in the field. But I've spent most of these years with PDA, over 8 years, working on different assignments in MERL. And so, yeah, my career has always been around research, evaluation, and learning. I think that is enough, or you want to hear more?
No, that's enough. I'm sure there will be more that comes out as we keep talking.
Exactly, as we continue the conversation.
But what about PDA as an organization when it comes to this topic of monitoring, evaluation, learning, research?
All right, so monitoring, evaluation, and learning, I think too many things mixed together. There's the monitoring aspect, there's the evaluation aspect, there's the research aspect, and more importantly, there's a learning aspect, which is where all of the things we are gathering, we're trying to make sense of it, and we are trying to take decisions, based on those activities, right? And so in PDA, like the name suggests, Participatory Development Associate, we usually take a participatory, practical approach to MERL, right? Where we are trying to amplify the voices of the people that projects are intended to support or to benefit. And so our approach to MERL is that the participant in the project or the intended beneficiary of a project is the main focus. And their voices and their voice matter a lot and is central to everything we do. So our approach to MERL is to ensure that their voices are heard and heard loudest among all the voices that are part of a particular project. Okay. See, oftentimes we usually consider those people as just the end users of a project, right?
The recipients.
The recipient of a project. And we consider ourselves the implementers, those who develop those concepts, those who fund it. We call ourselves as those who have the ideas, the experts, But in as much as we may have implemented these projects before and over time, and we have learned from different contexts, the recipients whom I refer, or I would like to call as participants, are those who have the lived experiences, right? And that is central to evidence gathering is central to learning, is central to MERL. And so if you overlook the lived experiences of people and you rely on your, years of experience or the theories that you have relied on to develop your project, you are not going to see the real impact. So that is where we come in, and we are focused on making sure that the voices of people are heard actively in project design, in project implementation. And so during evaluations, we ensure that we have taken a bottom-up approach, or an approach that allows the participants to share their experiences, to tell us what impact is, right? What change actually mean to them. That is what matters, and that is what we take into account when we are talking about learning, and we are talking about impact, and we are talking about evidence in MERL or evaluations. Yeah.
That really seems like it should be a no-brainer, right? The people who are receiving or are participating in all the activities that are being done, it's important that if we are serious about change and talking about the effects that it is having, it seems like it should be obvious for people to include them in the research. Can you give us some examples where some of this kind of participatory MERL that you're talking about has really led to some meaningful change?
Okay, so I'm sure there are several examples. And in the last 20 years or more, I think this is what PDA has been doing mainly. And every project that we have supported, I'm sure, might have led to some change. I don't want to single out projects for some reasons, because we have supported partners to adapt several projects to the local context, and that is key. Usually when projects are designed, they originate from two parties, the funders and those who are the implementers, right? And we have several instances where those two parties are not from our context. They are external actors, and so these projects are usually designed, maybe adapted for a different context, and they come down to implement. Or somebody sits down to conceptualize the idea and say that, I believe that I want to improve learning outcomes, right? And so if I go into, let's say, Ghana, I go into a particular community and I distribute textbooks, school bags, shoes, uniforms to students, they'll go to school if they are not going to school. And while they are in school, learning outcomes will improve, right? So that's a simple logic concept that the person has developed. Well, meanwhile, maybe when you come into the local context, the factors that determine whether somebody will be in school is not only about those items. Maybe there's distance, because school is not close to home. You have to travel, distance, kilometers away to go to school. So we need to factor that into the planning and the design, so that that gap is closed, right? So what we usually do is that usually we work with these partners who have projects either already pre-designed or at the ideation or concept development stage, to understand the local context better and gather relevant evidence that are unique to our context but very relevant to the design of the project and its sources. And I think we have done that over and over again in the area of education, in the area of child protection, issues around child trafficking, child labor. I think we've supported several partners to design and implement successful programs in Ghana. Also in the cocoa industry, issues around nutrition for farmers, for women, and so on. We have done that in Ghana, in Cote d'Ivoire. We have recently worked as far as Senegal, Nigeria, all of that supporting our partners. And so we can't actually quantify the impact, but yeah, we have made some good strides in that area.
And I think it's definitely critical. I was having a conversation with someone just before our talk, and he was making a little bit of a humorous point that even in our day-to-day lives, each of us kind of actually does MERL. At the end of the year, for instance, when you reevaluate everything that has happened, you know, when you tell yourself, okay, these are going to be my New Year's resolutions, you know, that has been a process of pausing to reflect, to take, you know, a bird's eye view of all the factors that are included, and then trying to change some aspect of your life based on those kinds of recognitions or learnings, as you are calling them. I am still interested in some of the very creative ways that MERL can be applied. And I think that this conversation is important, not just in the context of PDA and the work that we are doing, but just generally across board in the development sector, both in Ghana, across Africa. What do you think and what do you see in the space are some of the really creative ways that people are beginning to make MERL more relevant, more inclusive, more participatory, so that the kinds of people that it is including, even in the whole process, or the kinds of people or the kinds of processes and systems that are being used are more effective?
Okay, that's a
loaded question, isn't it?
Yeah, but even to before I come to the question directly, it's important to know that before MERL can be effective and you can innovate around it, you also need to be very intentional about integrating that into your processes. Unfortunately, there are still, you know, instances where some projects are designed without MERL as an integral part of it, and usually is considered an afterthought, you know, where people need to show accountability. Then they would say, okay, let's hire a consultant to come and evaluate our project to see whether it was well implemented or not. And at that point, it's just a matter of passing judgment to say the project was good, it achieved results, or it was not good, it didn't achieve results. But I think, and we've made some good strides in that area, but it's good that before you even conceive the idea of starting a project, then you also need to look at, you know, what you intend to achieve, and how do you want to achieve that, and then how do you measure your progress and your success and your impact, right? If you have that mindset, then right from the start, you will have a framework, you know, a MERL framework around that to begin with. So I think that's one thing that partners that intend to implement projects should not take for granted. And also MERL should not be seen as only passing judgments on projects, but it's an integral part of making sure the project is well implemented and all of that. So back to your question, I think that, you know, because we are also we are working with human institutions and human systems, oftentimes what sometimes you plan or what you conceptualize to be a perfect plan, at the point of implementation, several things may crop up, may happen, and things do not go the way you thought it would go, or it may even happen that whatever you conceptualized was entirely not the case, right? And so for that reason, I think there's a lot of focus on MERL these days. In fact, now it gained a lot of attention in the space, and a lot more organizations are becoming intentional about it. And in any serious project, at least there is that whole plan, and there's also a budget. You know, people are beginning to budget for these things. So there are several ways to be innovative about it. The first thing, if I start from what we do in PDA, is to be more participatory about it. And so I know when we say participation, it's a kind of a vague term. So what do you mean by participation, right? like I said from the beginning, participation in this case, what we mean is that, making the participant or the recipient of the intervention the central focus around which everything, work. And by so doing, we look at how best do we engage these people. We go into the community, sometimes organize focus group discussions. Like we all know, it's a common thing we do. But even in organizing focus group discussions, how do you ensure that the most vulnerable, the most marginalized are not also left out in the conversation? So there are different things we do, such as making sure that you're having separate conversations with separate people. Sometimes you go beyond just conversation, but to also use visual aids, right? People sometimes drawing things to illustrate what they are thinking, right? Because sometimes people can't even express themselves properly, and when you give them the space to use other means of communication, symbols, drawings, they're able to do that better. So we give them that opportunity to do that. Then continuous engagement with stakeholders in a process. Like I said, things change, right? And so in the course of implementing your project, a lot more may happen. And so continuously you have to engage the stakeholders to learn from the results you're seeing and to adapt, to any change that needs to be addressed. And so that's what we call adaptive management, where you are learning to inform changes in the life of the project. These days, we are in the technological age, and so a lot of innovation is happening around technology. AI has come to stay, and AI is being used to power, evaluations, right? And also technology itself, mobile-based technology, mobile web platforms are being used to collect data, and so these days you are able to reach a wider project participant through deploying mobile applications and other tech platforms. And so that is also ways that people are innovating. In fact, these days, if you don't employ technology in your MERL work, then I think you are being left behind. And so it's one of the things that is really shaping the MERL practice. And then data, how do we communicate data? I think that is becoming very sensitive these days. Data is central to MERL, and there's one thing collecting the data and then making the data meaningful and useful to everyone.
Right.
And so how do you communicate data has become a central part of MERL work. And so these days there are several tools to help visualize the data, make it more interactive, simplify it to the point that the last person, will understand the data. It will make sense to your participants, it will make sense to you, the implementer, and it will make sense to other stakeholders within the project. And there are several tools and tech-enabled softwares that help us to do these things. And so there are several things that people are doing to innovate around MERL. And I think if you want to continue, you can continue on and on and on. But we are also employing all of these things in our work these days, and even more. That time will not allow us to discuss all of them here.
I'm really interested in a point you made. You called it participation, but an example that you gave, for instance, that in a focus group discussion, you would separate people who perhaps in a larger group may not even feel, because there's that power distance, may not feel comfortable to speak up or to share their opinions and their thoughts. Yeah. And I think that's a really good example of being intentional and being deliberate about making sure you're getting information, the right kind of information from the people that it matters the most from. Another thing I'm curious about as you are speaking is how can we make this culture of learning become the normal, especially within local organizations in Ghana? It's one thing if you are implementing a project, somewhere in a community and you feel, okay, that's them, they are the recipients, they are the project participants, they need, help. But what about as an organization or as a government institution? What are some of the ways that you think we could make research and monitoring, evaluation, and learning a part of day-to-day life?
Okay, so it's a loaded question, but
all my questions are loaded.
I'll start by saying that the first thing we need to do is to build capacity in MERL, capacity in the area of data literacy, and then having a strong MERL team in each organization that is working in international development, whether local, international, so on. Because if you don't have that capacity, you will not even appreciate the need. And even if you appreciate, you can't do it well, right? And so if you have a strong team that can lead that process, then they can put together proper framework for you to have a good MERL system. And then you need a team that understands data and able to use data well to inform your decisions. And then the MERL, MERL must be a central or an integral part of, your strategies and your program design. And the leadership of those organizations must understand and appreciate the need to rely on evidence to inform decisions and to take actions, right? When you have your leadership buy into that, then they will also invest in things that will help you to have a good MERL system in place. And so I've spoken about the fact that we need to build capacity or have in-house capacity in MERL, the fact that our strategies, our planning and everything must be based on evidence and must have that insight. And then we need to have a leadership that appreciates evidence-based decision making. When you have that, then it's easy to invest and it's easy to appreciate the need to have evidence. Once there's that appreciation, then always you want to know what is happening, right? Before you take any action, before you take any decision. And if you want to do that, then the only way to go is to research, is to evaluate, is to reflect, on your things, the things you are doing, and where you need to adjust, where you need to pause and reorganize yourself. You will do that, and that's all part of the MERL process. So I think when we do these things, we can really integrate MERL and into our programs.
And having said all of this, and I agree with you how important MERL is, but we have to be a bit realistic about the kinds of challenges that some organizations would face when they are trying to start this whole, attitude of trying to recognize and appreciate and make use of MERL. And I'm going to start with one of the ones you kind of mentioned off the top of your heads, which is the political buy-in, if I should say it that way, where the leadership of the organization must really, in themselves, recognize and appreciate the importance of MERL. In which case, not only would they be willing to invest, but also when the reports come out, they are not just going to be things that are decorating their cabinet space, but they are really going to take it, read it, see what are actionable feedback that they can reintegrate to be able to improve the system. Any other challenges that you can foresee an organization might face?
Okay, organizations always face challenges. and these challenges, obviously, the MERL system or the MERL, if they have a MERL team, will not be excluded from that. And so, having worked in this space for a while, I think, and I'm saying this in no order of, preference or whatever, but one of the things that actually impacts the way we integrate MERL into programs it's even about the life cycle of projects. I think too many projects are very short in terms of duration, 1 year, 2 years. So
oh, when you said short, I thought you were going to say like 6 months,
No.
7 months. This is interesting. So let me delve more into that. Why is 1 year, 2 years too short for a project?
Yeah, for me it's too short for you to measure actual change or impact, because it changes a long-term thing, and the long-term here goes way beyond 1 or 2 years. Because it's a chain, right? You have to start with some input activities that you do. Then the activities will start yielding some results. Then you start seeing some changes or outcomes out of that. And then eventually what you want to see is a sustained change, right? Okay. So let's say that you want to improve learning outcomes, right? You want to improve learning outcomes. You start by, like example I gave earlier, you start by, let's say, supplying school items, school uniforms and things. Then you see people going to school, right? See people going to school and then even completing the school. But when they are completing, are they passing the exams? You know, that can even be measured in let's say in the 2-3 years, right? Whether they are passing or not. But if they pass the exams, what else? Whether they are able to, let's say, eventually transition into employment, into something that is life-changing, right? It's a long term. So if you're implementing a 1-year project, let's say in education, or in employment, or in any socioeconomic challenge that we face, it is very difficult for you to be able to assess all these things in a matter of a year or two, right? And most project lifespans or life cycles are around these times. Yeah. And so that's why I'm saying that in that context, 2 years or 1 year is too short. Right. And so, and the challenge I see here is that for that reason, most projects tend to focus on reporting rather than learning. Right.
Can you break that down for us? I think that's a very...
So the reporting essentially is somebody has given you money to implement a project. At the end of the day, they want you, there are some what they call KPIs, key performance indicators of your project implementation. They want to see that, okay, by the 3rd month you have done A, B, C, D. By half year you have done this and that. At the end of 1 year you should have accomplished A, B, C, D, and E. So you are too focused and locked in to achieving that because you want to meet your target and impress your funders and possibly get an extension. And so people tend to be more focused on that rather than pausing, reflecting, acknowledging their failures and learning and adapting to improve for a sustained change, you know. So that is what I mean by that. And I think if people have a lot more time and flexibility to implement their projects, maybe they can have a lot more time and also be more intentional to focus on learning rather than just getting reports that meet expectations and specifications of those who are giving you money to work. You know, so that's one of the challenges. And of course, capacity is still a challenge. You need to invest to build that capacity. And because some organizations, especially our local organizations, do not have the capacity, there's also an issue of data quality, you know, data quality. So we don't have reliable data. They are not able to put in place proper systems to gather quality data. And so if your data is bad, then whatever decision you are going to take out of the data might be as bad as your data, right? So Yeah, so that's also a challenge, and because if you also don't have the capacity and good MERL system, eventually you don't appreciate even the relevance of having a MERL system. So there are several challenges, but I think these three for me stand out as some of the key challenges.
Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been a very interesting time hearing about MERL and how it's been worked out both in the development sector, among organizations. I really do want you to kind of say a couple of words about this new trend or this new thought of African-led evaluation. What does that mean, within the space?
Okay, so it's a very interesting terminology or term, and it's also gained a lot of attention in recent times. And it's not a straightforward definition. I think you might have seen that we recently published a paper on this same subject.
We'll share the link in the bio so you can just check it out.
Yes, African-led evaluation. It's gained prominence because there's a need to internalize or indigenize evaluation, because if you look at international development, it's always led and dominated by our colonial masters and external donors. And so in the same way, evaluation is also largely influenced by them because they set the agenda. And mostly you will see even the consultants not coming from our place, they are from outside to do the evaluation. And because of that, it has been that for a very long time. So African-led evaluation is all about amplifying the voices of Africans in the evaluation context or in the evaluation process, letting Africans lead and be active influencers in the evaluation process, not just participating in it, collecting data or responding to surveys, but being the lead evaluators, being the ones that set the agenda, that write the reports, that write the recommendations, and that disseminates the learning. So it's essentially about asking Africans to tell their own story through evaluation, and that's what I would say. And that is an agenda that is everyone is trying to push here in Africa and Ghana as well.
Right. Thank you for that clarification. And thank you all for joining us for this conversation. I hope that you have learned a lot, as I have, and that you will keep following us. Check us out, Participatory Development Associates, on our various social media platforms. You can also look out for our website, www.pdaghana.com, to read a little bit more about all that we do and some of the works and the projects that we have worked on over the years. Did you want to add something more?
Oh, I want to say thank you very much for this conversation. I hope we'll have another time, maybe to talk about another aspect of evaluation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Alex, and we'll share his socials as well in the link. So please make sure to subscribe and follow notifications for all our subsequent videos. Bye.